Continuing our conversation on AI in publishing, there's a brand new feature inside of Photoshop called Generative Fill that allows you to input an image and extend the background with a prompt, or change something in the background, or change something about the image. And this is something that potentially could have some really cool implications on book cover design, especially if we're going to be expanding it for something like a hardcover dust jacket, or if we just need to build out an area. But we know that anything touched by AI that is created, even in part by AI, does not qualify for copyright protection. So how does this then have implications on the publishing industry? What do you need to know? What conversations do you need to have with your cover designer? We're talking to everybody's favorite IP and entertainment lawyer, Tony, to find out more.
My name is Tony Iliakostas. I'm an adjunct professor of entertainment law and IP at New York Law School, and I have an Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok account called The IP Professor that is dedicated to all things intellectual property.
Tony, there's a brand new feature in Photoshop that we are so excited about in the design world. It's called Generative Fill AI, and it allows you to import imagery, or if you are designing a book cover, you can then expand things around it using AI. So if you've got a really cool photo and you need to expand the street or the water or the mountains, and you don't want to do it by hand, Generative Fill can fix it for you. But we've had lots of conversations on using AI in the publishing industry. We have a full playlist on the legal, ethical, and creative side of things. We'll link it down below for you. And we've discussed this with Tony before, but let's dig into specifically Generative Fill. If we've done most of it, can designers still use Generative Fill and not destroy our copyright protection?
So it's the classic lawyer answer probably going to give that everybody's going to hate, which is it depends, right? Unfortunately, we just don't have necessarily the best guidance at this point in time on what the threshold has to be for human authorship in order for the Copyright Office to grant protection. The reason why I'm having emphasis on that is because the Copyright Office has made it very clear that anything generated using artificial intelligence is just not going to get copyright protection at all. They ride or die by this whole argument of human authorship, substantial human involvement. It is essential to the creation of any work of authorship that passes through the halls of the U.S. Copyright Office. They've made tons of decisions on this in recent months, even years, on generative AI, to the point that we had a paramount decision come down recently, a few weeks ago, in the DC District Court, where basically they ruled that anything generated using artificial intelligence will not get copyright protection because it lacks human authorship. But now we get to this point that you're bringing up, which is, what if I use generative AI fill to, like, let's say, touch up something? Let's say that I went to Pexels, or I took photos myself, and I put it in some type of 8:11 ratio, whatever ratio it is for a book cover on Photoshop. I put it in, I do my own organic form of photoshopping, but now I want to touch it up a little bit here and there using generative AI. I think that's like the $64,000 question there, right? Is that touching up going to entirely invalidate the copyright? Right. And that's where I think, the Copyright Office is probably going to have to give a bit more guidance about what their threshold is looking like for human involvement, and is something like that just minor enough that you're still going to not overlook the fact that the majority of it was created using an actual human author. That's the part that I think is yet to be determined, and I think we're going to probably get more guidance on that as more case law rolls out, as the Copyright Office even sees more applications come through. I am sure that in real time, the Copyright Office is getting tons of applications pouring through its email inbox that feature this type of scenario, where the generative AI fill type of scenario is part of the application. The registrant has disclaimed that the majority of it was authored by a human author, but they used mild AI to help touch it up a little bit. That's the kind of thing that I guess it's up to the Copyright Office to say, is that any different than, let's say, the cloning tool on Photoshop, which in some way is kind of like AI-ish, but not to the same extent as completely making something up. It is using some type of organic, or it's a tool that is being used to touch it up. That's really the unfortunate part of this whole discussion. We just don't have that guidance just yet. I will say this: if you have spent a majority of time, literally 95% of the work is authored by a human author, and you were to take that to the Copyright Office and even just claim that maybe 5% of it was generated using artificial intelligence, using a generative AI fill feature on Photoshop, personally, I would find it so hard-pressed to believe that the Copyright Office would be willing to invalidate the entirety of that copyright just because of that 5% usage of generative AI. That's the part that I would find, I couldn't wrap my head around or justify why that's an okay decision from the Copyright Office. So I think it's more of like a, try it out and see what happens. But at this point in time, that's really the landscape of generative AI features or generative AI works with the Copyright Office. I think it's sort of the kind of thing where we won't really have the best answer yet until more decisions come out from the Copyright Office, and certainly as more case law comes out addressing the stern question about generative AI and substantial human involvement.
And of course, if you are brave enough to try it out, there are a couple things I want you to keep in mind as a multi-time best-selling author and a book cover designer. If you're hiring somebody to create your book cover, as you should always hire a professional, you want to make sure you have the conversation before it happens. So if you do not want AI on your cover, say so. Make sure it's part of that contract. If you're willing to allow them to use part of a generative fill AI piece in your book cover just to try it and see if you can get copyright protection over it, what then do you need to ask these people? You need to ask about a redesign. You need to ask about what happens if the copyright does not get granted. Are they going to change it, or are you going to have to pay a cover designer to redesign the entire thing, to fix it, to what? What does that look like on the financial side for you as an author? What does the time frame look like? Have that all in writing and in your fabulous contract so that you do not have to deal with it on the back end if something does not go the way that you have planned. If you've got questions on your book cover design, go ahead and drop it down below. I do book cover designs live on air all the time for you. I get your questions answered, and Tony gets your questions answered from the legal side and the AI legal side as well. So drop your questions down below, and as always, you can let us know what you want to know in terms of AI and publishing. We have the legal, creative, and ethical side of this playlist linked down below for you. Lots of episodes with Tony, lots of episodes with me, and we're getting your questions answered as well. And you can always reach out to Tony on his social medias if you want to hang out with him while you're waiting for the next episode. Tony, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the IP Professor, and you can check out my entertainment law podcast called End Scene. New episodes drop every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
There's an entire playlist of the legal, ethical, and creative side of AI inside of publishing. Lots of ideas on how to use AI and the things to stay away from as well. Drop your questions down below. Tony's coming back for the legal side episodes, and as your resident tech expert, I am here to help break down the techie side of entrepreneurship and AI inside of the publishing industry. We're also here with daily videos to help you navigate the world of marketing your books to make this your most profitable year ever, from your writing to your publishing to your marketing. We're creating luxury time so you can live your best life while also living out your author dreams. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.